We're pleased to welcome now the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Mississippi, Governor Delbert Hosemann. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, Gerard. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well. So, we were just talking about the current session. We're winding it down here right now. So, are we going to get a budget?
Here's hoping. We'd like to get one. So many people depend on this budget. You know, our teachers are signing their contract for next year. Principals try to get them to sign up here in April so they'll know if they got to go recruit somebody to teach math or something. So that's going on. All of our others, we have many other people who base their budget in community colleges, universities, you pick it. There are about over 100,000 people that work in city, county, and education, and in the state government. The state government's actually shrunk on purpose since I started. We started with 26,000. We're down to about 24,000 employees now, and we hope to shrink it further by attrition and retirement and whatnot, just paying better attention on how many people we need to do the job. But there's about over 100,000 that are in the education sphere, the county, the cities, all that public stuff. So they all got to be assume what their return's going to be and what they're going to be paid this next year. And we have everything from Child Protective Services. We're trying to get more lawyers to try to get kids adopted faster. To the governor wants a uniform youth court. We're trying to get that done as well, and that's having troubles among my friends at the House. That allows for kids to get adopted quicker, but more importantly, to be having addressed when they have more minor crimes, if there are such things as minor crimes, they would be addressed quicker by a judge, and possibly we have these challenge places that they can go and maybe get their feet back under them and get them out of a bad environment, basically divert them from more crime more later on, in which we have to do more serious stuff and they become wards of the state. So there's a lot of things that go on with this budget, and it's not just how many cars you got. We cut those down too, but there's a lot that goes on with it. And I'm hopeful. As you know, we struggled. We were supposed to have it done, last Saturday, and we didn't make it. The Senate was there, the House left. So
I'm looking at the LBO report from last year, and our budget came in at $7,030,000,000.
That's
so just
correct.
under 7.1. What figure are you looking at this year? Do you have a feel for that?
We're
at this
down
point?
a little bit from our projection. We projected out as in the 7.5, 7.6 range, 7.5 billion or 7.6 billion range.
Well, that's the spending. That's what I'm talking about.
The spending,
7.1 billion, 7.03.
Yeah, that's what we anticipate spending. It will be very close to that on the spending side. On the revenue side, we had projected somewhere in the 7.5 to 7.6, and we're slightly below that. But you know something, Gerard? I'm glad you said that. We raised $7 billion. That's we've cut taxes, as you know. We can talk about those. We've cut taxes about every year I've been there. We're going to cut them again, just cut them again. But we get $7 billion. The federal government gives us $14 billion.
Right.
Now, that's like you running this TV station not knowing where two-thirds of your revenue is going to come. And let me tell you what's come home to roost. And you and I both have talked about this privately before. Yesterday at 4:59, day before yesterday now, I guess, at 4:59, the Department of Education in Mississippi was informed that $190 million of their funds had been frozen. Now, these were funds that were used for various education projects. Some of them were construction projects in schools that are ongoing now. Schools that had taken money from the government on an extension of the CARES Act and whatnot to be able to use these funds. Now that's $190 million that we were going to get that we don't get. Now people got paid with that. There'll be people that don't make paid, so they got to go get another job. There's no guarantee they'll get another job or even stay in the state. Schools were redoing their stuff, and in my position, I was always been even if the federal government cuts some money, I'm still liable to these contractors and stuff. We need to pay those people. They're Mississippians, and we're not going to leave them on the lurch like this. So that's $190 million. This week we received from the Department of Health. They had frozen $120 million of Department of Health's budget. So you knew the numbers real well. You're real smart about that. So you can see what's adding up here. And they think they've got another $100 million that's come out of DOGE. So just back, you and I talking, there's $500 million sitting out here that we have been notified or been going to be notified that is not going to be coming. Now, some of that is people that we won't be able to do. Some of it is working with teaching kids how to better read. We've been very successful lately in improving our education system. We still got a ways to go, but we've been making improvements on that. Some of it is that. Some of it's school construction. Some of it's health department matters, where they were building out health departments in the various counties, take care of better care of people at the county health department level. So all of that stops. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily we owe that money. We will owe some of those funds, but it means money stops coming into this state, which is going back to this budget.
We're too reliant on the federal government. You know that.
Absolutely.
I know that. We all and we hadn't gotten to Medicaid, and that's in the $8 billion range for the federal government against our $1 billion.
Right. And we're still
somewhere in there.
We're short somewhere around. They tell us about $200 million this year short on Medicaid. If they don't do anything,
that's what the division of Medicaid
right.
is saying, without making any changes or expanding Medicaid,
that's
just
correct.
base standard Medicaid.
That's correct.
And that's going to keep going up.
That's correct. And so when you're talking, and this is a good discussion, people don't get a chance maybe if you're driving along to listen a little bit about this, but we are at the whim and caprice of the federal government on our budget. Everybody just needs to know that. We have a $30 billion budget. There's special funds for some of this other, but twice as much money as we pay taxes comes into this state for various and sundry other matters, from Medicaid being the largest, but a number of other matters, two of which I just outlined to you at the Department of Education and Department of Health. Now, they haven't touched our Child Protective Services yet. They haven't touched mental health. They haven't touched several other organizations, our Health and Human Services Department. They haven't touched any of those yet that we know of. But it's like the Mama used to say, I can hear the train coming down the track. So that's kind of where we are.
Well, and the reality is of the money the federal government, because I have done the math on this, the money that every dollar that goes out of the federal government, with the exception of Social Security and Medicare, which are a little bit separate deals, 40 cents of every dollar we borrow.
That's right.
Borrow. It's insane when you think about it. So
absolutely.
All this money that's coming our way at the state, 40 cents of it is borrowed. So we're on the hook for it as the debtor, essentially, for this.
And that is exactly right. There's two things I want to talk to you about that. First is you're exactly right about that. We spend more on interest right now than we do on defense.
Trillion.
So everybody just try to think a little bit. More than ships and planes and all that stuff you see us going into space, we spend more on interest than we do on any of that. Okay, that's number one. It's not sustainable. Unless the interest rate goes down, there's no way for us to balance the budget in the country. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I figured this was coming. You and I are business people. We've been around. So we've been paying off the state's debt. We'll pay off another $400 million of state's debt. We haven't borrowed any money. And I'm not borrowing any money.
Where do we stand now? About $8 billion, though, right?
Oh, no. We're down about $4 billion. We were like 5 something. We're down about 4.5 or 4.6, and we're going to about 3.6 or 3.8.
I'm off on that.
Yeah. Right. So we've been paying. You're off because we've been paying off debt.
$400 million, right, in our appropriations last year.
Yeah.
$400 million of expenses of interest on our debt last year.
Yeah,
right?
Interest, and we paid off principal of $400 million. We paid interest as well.
So that's just basic retiring on the schedule of the debt and not taking out any new debt.
That's correct. That is the key. Before, when the Democrats had this, what they did every year was they borrowed money to make the budget work. We've not been doing that. We've been paying it out of the revenue that we receive from the taxpayers. I knew this part was coming. Our rainy day fund's got $700 million in it, and our wind pool fund for the coast has got $400 and something million in it. We have been saving for a rainy day. And the president has been real clear with us when we hired him. We're going to have some short-term pain here, and that's happening. That's happening at the Department of Health. It's happening at the Department of Education. It's going to happen to the other federal grants.
Total debt service last year, I'm looking at it now, $418 million in the state of Mississippi. So that's principal and interest. Total debt service, which is a significant line item. Like the fourth biggest line item probably in the whole budget behind education, Medicaid, corrections.
Yeah, well, the biggest item is retirement. But
well, that's not in the general fund, as you know, so I'm just looking at the general fund spending.
No, we have retired that debt down, and I intend to, hopefully this next year as well, if we hang on one more year, we'll be able to retire another $400 million. And we're getting ourselves in position to where if we have to borrow money, we'll be able to do so. We're basically paying down our credit card. That's the way you want to look at it.
Yeah. So the question I have, though, still that I'm curious about, and maybe it's too early to tell, but I get that we're reducing the ranks, the number of employees, and that's been going on for some time. But the question is, are we reducing expenses? So if we're just reducing headcount, but our spending's staying the level or going up, we're really not achieving anything. To speak up,
we're reducing,
except putting more pressure on PERS.
Well, that's true. We are reducing the individual body count, but we've also increased our expenditures on education, particularly on two big tranches, over $400 million. That's where the increases is coming.
We got a break. If you can hang around,
I'll stay one more, and then we're in session, so I have to get back and work.
Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, our guest, coming. Well, studio, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann is our guest. All right, so we got to talk about probably the highest profile legislation of the whole session, and that's the tax bill that got passed into law last week. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows there's at least in the opinion of some, there's a drafting error. Now, Senator Daniel Sparks says he could actually argue about that error, whether or not it was an error or how it would be interpreted, I should say that way. And you lawyers, that you do math sometimes different than the rest of us do.
I said when the governor signed the bill, I went back to the Bible, which is always a good back to go back to. I said, let he who has not had the first typo cast the first stone. So,
I think that's all true. I think the surprise here, all due respect, Governor, is that how many people missed it.
No joke. We had state agencies, we had the drafters, we had the conference board, we went through conference committee, we went through all the Senate, outside people, actuaries. I can tell you, it was like instead of saying 85%, they put in 0.85, and there you are. So we have sent down to the House of Corrections bill to correct that typo, which is what it was, and they've informed me that they may not sign that. We'll have to wait and see. The session's not over. We'll see if they'll do that or not. And if not, then we got one thing I can tell you is our tax cuts are good through 2031. So we're all on ground to that, and then sometime in the next 5 or 6 years we'll have to figure out the typo.
Well, and already we've got income taxes declining through the bill we passed in 22. I've talked about it on the show today.
You're right about that. We're cutting taxes when we hadn't finished cutting taxes the last time.
So we're in the 4.4 rate this year, 4.7 last year, 5 the year before. We'll be 4 next year, but then over the following 4 years we go down to 3.
That's correct.
So if you looked at 24 as a baseline for revenue, where we had a 4.7 rate, we're going to 3 in 6 years in 2030. I mean, you can do that math there. That's a 40% decrease.
That is correct.
In the tax rate. Are you concerned about how that would affect revenues?
Always. We did our projections based upon a growth factor, which we anticipated has been running anywhere from 2 to 3%, and the government has been running about 3% on average. So we anticipated a growth rate of 3%, and we obviously, quite frankly, have to hold our expenses close to where they are. We can't be jumping up a lot. So if we hold our expenses down, that gap period ought to be able to absorb the amount of increased income and the lowering and making sure we don't raise our expense side. That should meet the requirements, and according to our projections, it would, based on that anywhere from 2.1 to 3% growth in regular inflation growth. So and I know the governor has announced yesterday that we had the second fastest growing GDP state in the country.
The question is, how does that translate into revenue for the state? Because if you're cutting the tax rate, you might be increasing income.
If we're getting $7 billion and it goes up 3%, that's $210 million a year.
Oh, I get it. And so what I'm saying is, if your primary
that equals a tax cut, basically.
Well, we've got right. So we're covering the decrease in revenue with the surplus. So essentially, we're aligning the income tax rate with that.
That's correct.
But we're going to get to a point where the only source of revenue we're going to have is sales taxes.
Well, we cut the grocery tax too. You remember that? That's $127 million.
Right.
So you have to put that in your numbers.
But unless this cut of income taxes translates into an increase in consumer spending, which generates sales taxes, we're going to have to do something else, I fear, to make ends meet, and that may be we have to cut substantially.
I don't
spending.
know about our projections are, and I'm serious about this. We were real comfortable through 2030, looking at where we were, what the state economist was doing, what the national government was telling us, And all the players that were there, we felt really comfortable about that. That's why we put a trigger in beginning in 31.
Right.
That you could go up only if you had so much money earned in excess of the amount you expended. So that's why we put the trigger, and that's why the trigger was there to protect us from just this.
But we don't have that now.
Well, we got something.
Effectively, we don't have that.
I don't know. Depends on who you talk to. We got a trigger, but how you interpret it is another matter. Well, that'll work its way out over the next several years. But I felt comfortable that in the next 3 or 4 years, as we have Amazon, we have all these other companies coming in here and increased employment. I think our education system is the key to that. Community college system, all the things that are working well for us should generate more money. We should have more people, and we should have more spendable income. And that, of course, solves, as the governor is proud to say, a good, healthy job with $75,000 or $85,000 a year solves a lot of problems.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Provided they go out and spend money and generate sales taxes.
I don't think Mississippians have trouble with that. we can spend the money if we can earn it. Now, if we got a good chance to earn it, we'll be able to spend it, I think.
I got you. Well, we'll see where that goes. But it looks like we're on a path to get that done.
That's correct.
Now, historically, you hadn't been a big fan of cutting the income tax or eliminating the income tax.
It wasn't that I wasn't a fan. I had the same questions that you just gave me. I said, all right, guys, we're going out here and we're going to say we're going to cut this out over the next 10 or 15 years. And like I remember 15 years ago, what was the top stock? Well, like GE. Well, it's gone. You start going back. I said things change, economics change. We're on the cutting edge for a lot of our stuff. Automobiles. The president's talking about putting tariffs on those. There are a lot of things that are evolving in Mississippi. Are we sure that we can go out? And I wasn't sure.
Right.
Not that I don't want to eliminate the income. I don't want people to pay any taxes, but we need to do that to run the government. But what I was concerned about was that we not do this without some type of trigger, that some kind of bumper for as we got further out into oblivion. Like when you ran your companies, did you do a 15-year projection?
Not 15, 5.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I can see down the road.
And 5,
Wall Street wants 10, and they want to know where every penny in and out. It's impossible.
Impossible to do. So yes. I had the same thing with the state. We're a $30 billion business, so I needed to figure out where we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years. So I felt real comfortable about the 4 or 5. And the elimination of the income tax is a positive thing, an economic positive thing for Mississippians.
Agreed.
And we wanted to be able to say we were the only state that's ever done that. We're the fastest, our biggest increase in education. We've got a lot of positive things going. So that was another one to do. And as long as we are careful about it as we go forward, that would be fine. And we'll be more of a consumption-based sales tax.
Education, as you know, comprises about 54% of total general fund spending. Mm-hmm. And so anytime I think about cutting spending, I always look to education as an area. Is there some opportunity there?
No.
No way to cut that. School district consolidation, is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we worry about the individuals that are paying money for too many people working in the administration in schools, and I have concerns about that.
Sure.
There are 2 problems with that. One, I don't pay them. The state of Mississippi pays the teachers. The actual school board tells how much you're going to pay the superintendent.
That's right.
I don't have anything to do with it.
But we do send them roughly $7,000 a student.
Yeah, we do. And that $7,000 a student doesn't usually pay for the education of that child.
But don't they have control over how they spend that?
They do.
That's what I thought.
But that money would barely educate, so it doesn't cover this other tax money that they're getting for superintendents. They need to be more specific about that. They're doing better, particularly on things like technical training opportunities and welders
CTE.
And stuff, CTE stuff. They're doing better about that. But there is overhead in the public school system in Mississippi that could be reduced.
Okay.
Some are better than others, and you can look at the test scores and see that.
Can we cut Medicaid?
No.
Can we cut corrections?
Corrections.
Aren't we under scrutiny with the DOJ?
We are. We are out. We're not being sued. We won the suit on the mental health, which is rare. We're still under a child protective services suit, but we won the mental health. We're not under a court order by corrections. We have improved our corrections. We've had to invest a good bit of money in making sure that the inmates, were getting decent food and whatnot. There was a riot the day I got hired. There was a riot up in Parchman. I went there at the time the riot was going on. So those things have calmed. We are spending a lot of money on corrections.
I asked about those 3 because, as you know, that's 70-something% of the total general fund spending.
And I think the federal court orders in Alabama cost them billions of dollars. So we're in a little bit of a defensive mode there. We want to make sure they're getting decent health care, that they're not in a cell that's 125 degrees. You know, this is not supposed to be a country club, but we also have some human parts of that. And we just passed some legislation to allow them to work outside, like work in Greenwood and work in different places. So I'm very hopeful that the actual utilization of the people that are in prison in an outside activity gives them a growth for the future and lets them go forward.
The auditor says that we spend an outsized amount of money compared to some other states on casualty insurance on our properties and buildings. Is that? Have you looked into that?
I haven't. It's on my list for next year. I have done this in the private industry where we're upping our deductible amount, quite frankly, and I want to do that for the state.
Down.
That's exactly right. And so I anticipate we will be doing that next year, where we're looking where we may have a $50,000 deductible. I want to raise it to $100,000 deductible.
I know you got to go. Appreciate you coming.
It's always good to visit. We cover a lot of topics in a short time.
We did. Appreciate it, Governor. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you. Pray for everybody in the legislature, y'all. We're working hard.
We're coming right back in the Element